What's good, YouTube? We back here with another video. So today I got a video. It's called "The Most Unsettling Airbnb Stories" by Tough. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
It's the holidays, so it's very common to go visit family out of state, and with that comes renting out places if necessary. One of the most popular apps to do just that is Airbnb, which fun fact stands for Air Bed and Breakfast.
Huh?
The company do just that is Airbnb, which fun fact stands for Air Bed and Breakfast.
Yuck. I wish I never knew that.
The company began in 2008 and is a place where the host can rent out a home, room, or even an experience if you want to try something new. But with something that's been in business for about 16 years and revolves around its community, there have been a lot of dangerous events that have occurred. From hosts placing hidden cameras in rooms, guests using the rented home for drug use, orgies, and even a makeshift brothel, to
Did this nigga say orgies? Bruh. You ran out of Airbnb just to do that. It's crazy. I mean, never mind.
even discovering a corpse in the same location where a guest simply thought they were going to relax. Today's video is dedicated to unsettling Airbnb stories.
Talk to me.
Hey guys, my name is Tuv. I'll be your host for today's video. I'm always the go. What am I saying? I'm always the host on this channel. Here's the current sub count. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't even worry about that. I'll earn your subscription by the end of this video. Sometimes I wish you guys could smell me through the screen because my cologne game is crazy. Luckily, you too have.
Mine is too. Not really, you know. I got simple shit. I got the basic colognes, you know. But we finna skip past this. I'm sorry.
To the video. Host secretly took over 2,000 guest images. The whole idea behind Airbnb is to provide guests with more affordable and homier vibes compared to hotels. As a host, or rather the owner of...
I'm not gonna lie, the hotels be hidden. Well, most of them I've been to, they've been hidden. They got the nice crisp, I wouldn't say crisp, but they got the nice cool air with the bed, the comfortable bed a little bit. Well, not the first night, but you know, after the first night, you start getting used to it. Then the bed be comfortable. Yeah.
Of the home or accommodation, you can do a lot towards this and even earn the superhost status if you get continuous positive reviews from guests. 54-year-old Jay Ali had been ranked as a superhost, having provided guests with exceptional rural retreats over the years. He had a cabin in the hill country town of Comfort in Texas called Ali's Cielito Lindo Ranch, which was described to have been cozy, quiet, and safe. Now, from what I just said, you'd expect nothing but good vibes from the host, right? Well, no, you're watching a Tuv video, so that's not what's going to happen in this story. On February of 2023, he was charged with 15 counts of invasive visual recording. He had secret cameras constantly recording guests, and he ended up pleading guilty to 6 of them. Apparently, Ali had captured over 2,000 images of guests in their most intimate moments. This included them sleeping, undressing, and even having sex.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I often say, cameras at your house is not crazy. But since he explained it, I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about cameras in the house. I'm like, bro, what the fuck? There's cameras around the house, so okay, that's understandable. Nah, inside the house, while people in your house is crazy. Now, I understand you got cameras in your house when you there. Like, cut that shit off, you weird ass to go. Oh my, And then you watching, I wouldn't say watching, but like, you looking at people while they sleep. And like, bro, you're weird.
He literally captured everything. Disgustingly enough, even children weren't spared, counting up to more than 30 of the unknowing victims. So how did Ali's scheme eventually get discovered? The answer to this takes us back to July of 2021 when a couple from the Midwest, David and his girlfriend, booked a stay at his property. Right from the get-go, they were quite concerned since Ali has suggested it would be a great experience to watch the sunrise from the porch, either in their pajamas or entirely naked. It's pretty normal for hosts to suggest fun activities, but to straight up say, yeah, you guys You guys can be naked at the porch. Extremely suspicious from the
Weird
start.
as fuck.
I guess they rubbed it off and continued with their stay. It was, however, when his girlfriend was showering later that David noticed the AC power adapter was facing the bed. Because of those initial comments from the host and just basic instinct, he took a closer look and his fears were confirmed. Turns out that it was actually a hidden camera that was wired into the wall. Immediately, they did the only thing they could do at that point: leave. They then filed a criminal complaint at the Kendall County Sheriff's Office. Just a day after this, the police issued a search warrant on the property as well as on Ali's home, which was nearby. Investigators confiscated at least 6 electronic devices that belonged to Ali, which were later handed to the US Department of Homeland Security. Investigations were still ongoing when in October of 2021, a new piece of evidence suggested that the hidden camera had actually been set up in the property for at least 9 months before that specific couple had reported it. Crazily, this piece of evidence was an Instagram video that had been recorded in November of 2020, showing what looked like the same AC adapter in the exact same position. This is how the 2,000 plus images I mentioned at the beginning of this case came about, with some sources actually quoting a total of 2,126 image thumbnails. Slowly, as the news spread, more guests who stayed at Ali's property,
wait,
126
what?
at the beginning of this case came about, with some sources actually quoting a total of 2,126 image thumbnails.
Oh, I'm okay.
Slowly, as the news spread,
that's
more guests who stayed at
crazy.
Ali's property came out with complaints, obviously concerned about their privacy. At least 17 of the victims were being represented by attorneys Roger Bresnahan and Bianca Zuniga Goldwater, who described their clients' experiences to have been like a real-life scary movie. Now, what makes this whole thing even more bizarre is that despite the accusation, Ali had initially claimed to be innocent of the charges and even was looking forward to the hearing. His professed innocence, though, never held water for long because beside the concrete evidence at the scene, he began sending threats to David, the man who initially discovered the hidden camera. Apparently, texts were discovered of Ali accusing David of allegedly placing the camera there himself, and that, quote, he would have to take the necessary measures to protect his family from extortion and fraud, end quote. Anyway, Ali ended up serving time in jail and was eventually released after his 1-year sentence. He actually got out earlier this year in February. Also, over and above all of that, at least 13 other people who had stayed at his property, including 2 minors, sued Airbnb in 2022 for privacy violations. They won, and 6 months later, Airbnb agreed to a settlement. The company also responded by condemning Ali's actions. Unfortunately for the victims, it seemed like no amount of justice would ever be enough. Some of them sadly reported that they're suffering from long-term trauma, just living with the fear that their images, or even worse, their kids' images, are somewhere floating around in the internet or in some weird people's hard drives.
True.
Guests on a drug-induced orgy. We've just seen how guests can have a creepy experience in an Airbnb. Well, the reverse has also happened. Hosts having terrible experiences with guests. The case I have in mind is from April of 2015. A couple, Mark and Star King from Cal.
Yeah, y'all niggas do like swingers. And it was drug. Oh. What the fuck? What makes you be like, let's take some drugs? You know what's better? Let's bring a lot of people. Let's fuck them. Like, bro. This picture is just insane. Where is the pillows at for the couches? Why is it a random horse? Bro, there's a lot going on with this picture.
Calgary, Canada, rented out their home for the weekend through Airbnb, only to come back to a completely destroyed house. And I mean completely trashed. Stained cushions, garbage, and sticky stuff all over, even the ceiling, with flooded toilets, condoms, etc. The police, who obviously had to be involved, with flooded toilet, cushions, garbage, and sticky stuff all over, even the ceiling, with...
Bro, the ceiling game. What? Bro, come on now. I get the pillows and the sticky stuff everyone on the lower level, but how? You had to be aiming up. You just had to. Because I know no way you did that unintentionally. Bro, they fucked this house up. Bro, what was y'all making? I'd be
with flooded
pissed if I was on
toilets,
Airbnb
condoms, etc. The police, who obviously had to be involved, described what happened there as a drug-induced
And then these niggas use fake credit cards. Oh wow.
orgy and probably one of the worst offenses of malicious property damage. Now, the couple had genuinely no idea they'd rented their home to a bunch of thrill seekers. They'd been led to think
wait. This is their house. I thought these was the people that did it. Okay, this their house. Okay,
they were hosting 4 adults who were allegedly in town for a wedding, and the offer was so good that as a sacrifice to earn the extra money.
Is that a clown hanging around? This is a wild picture. If that's
They made plans to stay with Mark's parents as soon as they settled on a rate agreement with the renter. Sadly, it didn't take long for all hell to break loose after they handed over the keys that Friday. It was reported that just a few hours later, a 2-day-long party began, which eventually, of course, led to their home being thrashed. Also, apparently, the Kings had been receiving texts from their neighbors throughout the weekend about what was happening. For example, according to them, they were texted about a huge fight that had happened on their lawn and suspicion of property damage. Things had actually been so bad that the police even made several visits throughout the weekend, especially for multiple noise complaints. And for perspective, the host had handed the guests the keys on Friday, and it wasn't until Sunday morning that the police eventually got the revelers to leave. Actually, the previous night on Saturday, the neighbors saw a party bus that brought in almost 100 people to the home that weekend. So that Saturday night, there was a proper party at the premises, and thus the morning after, the police weren't just escorting out one person, no, it was a lot of people. And they said it took a while before they got everyone to leave. Anyway, the couple eventually returned to the home on Monday, and this is when they got to see, at least in person, the state of their house. Mark described his reaction as pure shock. He simply couldn't understand how the trust they had in these people had been betrayed. He was devastated. According to them, the couch cushions were stained and piled in the hallways. Nearly all the surfaces were covered with garbage and sticky stuff, barbecue sauce on the ceiling, cigarette butts all over the place, and even bone broth of all things and Star shoes. To add on to that, they found bras and underwear just laying around, and even more disgustingly, the toilets were clogged with used condoms. They actually wish they had found their house burnt down to ashes instead of the mess that they got. Again, even the police agreed this was one of a kind. They had never seen anything like it. The estimated damages were thought to be between $50,000 to $75,000. Fortunately, investigations soon identified the renter. It's unclear how the criminal investigation went down and the consequences of that, but according to AirBNB, they banned the renter from accessing any of their services in the future. Also, an Airbnb representative assured the Kings that they were working on, quote, quickly reimbursing them under their $1 million host guarantee, which typically covers damages of host property. Turned the space into a junkie den. Doubling down on hosts having horrible experience with guests, this Sydney woman, Holly, was deceived into renting out her Roselle apartment in 2016 by a tenant identified as Michelle, who later turned the place into a junkie den. Now, the way it happened was that Michelle lied to Holly that she had a sick child at the Sydney's Children's Hospital in Randwick and desperately needed a place to stay. An arguably really compelling story that led Holly to rent out the place for 10 days while she stayed at her mom's place. Also, apart from genuinely being willing to help out, Holly was a first-time Airbnb user. This means she was really eager to get into the business and, of course, make some money. She particularly had hoped that what she earned from Michelle's stay would go into paying off some credit card debt. There's also the fact that together with her boyfriend, they had, in general, gone out of their way to decorate the apartment with nice furniture, just as a way to give their potential guests the best experience possible. And with Michelle being her first guest, Holly had made sure that the space was professionally cleaned just before she checked in. Unfortunately for Holly, her kindness was met by what she described to have been a, quote, junkie den. When she returned to her apartment, she found that not only had she been robbed, but also that the place was completely trashed. There was rotten fruit smeared on the walls, a cracked pipe in a vase, and several of her items missing. That includes cushions, lamps, a speaker, and a hard drive. In addition, there was a mysterious green liquid on a lot of the walls, and her towels were disturbingly covered in blood. The place stank of chemicals. They later found out from the police that this had been either heroin or ice. And it was undeniably evident that trashing the place was Michelle's goal from the start because the smoke alarm in the apartment had been covered. More of the mess also included several used cigarettes on the kitchen counters and cupboards. All of that, of course, being hurtful to Holly, but what really pained.
Bro, what's ice? I ain't never heard of ice. Let me look it up. Oh, hannah. I don't know how to say it. Oh, it's meth.
Pained her was seeing ashes spread across her $2,000 rug. The total amount of damages came to about $10,000. Sadly, all that rendered Holly homeless because she didn't have an alternative place to stay while all the damages were being fixed. And to add insult to injury, Holly claimed that Airbnb had not responded to any of her complaints even as the police got involved. All she got from them was that they were, quote, looking into their claim. And her claim? Well, justifiably, all she wanted was to be compensated for the cleaning cost and the damages. It was actually not after a massive uproar among online users that Airbnb eventually took some action. Michelle was banned from accessing any Airbnb services in the future, and a spokesman shared that they would be prosecuting her for the damages. Additionally, Airbnb transferred $2,200 to Holly's account to help with the immediate cleanup of the apartment and for her temporary accommodation. Now, a funny yet not so funny bit here is that, like they do for all their hosts after their guest leaves, Airbnb sent a text to Holly reminding her to rate her house guest, and to her, it felt like this was just one more final insult. Guests ran a pop-up brothel. Before we dive into this one, maybe I should get out of the way that sex work is legal in the UK. Well, except in Northern Ireland, where paying for sex isn't allowed. In general, sex work adjacent activities, for example, soliciting for sex and
Is it illegal in the US? Okay. I don't know.
Brothels aren't allowed.
Really
that can translate to more than one sex worker not being able to live or work from the same house. Now, to get around all that, seeing that we live in a truly digital era, what are being referred to as pop-up brothels are on the rise in the UK. This phenomenon especially got the online community talking back in 2017 after an Airbnb host reported a curious incident in his apartment after he had unknowingly rented it out to, quote, high-profile escorts. The host later contacted the BBC to share his horrible experience, and just like in the BBC piece where they used an alias, that being Greg for him, we'll just go with that name. Now for this particular booking, the guests apparently had asked if they could pay in cash, something which Greg was skeptical about and immediately said no. He refused that offer because it would be going against the Airbnb terms of service, and it also meant Airbnb wouldn't cover anything in case something went wrong. The guests eventually agreed to the proper booking format, and Greg, against his initial judgment, chose to ignore his suspicions about them and allowed them to check in. Nothing seemed odd in their stay, although when it was finally time for them to leave, Greg received a text from them requesting to extend their stay by a few hours because they had a heavy night. That, bundled with his initial suspicion, made him unsettled, and out of curiosity, he went on to look up their names on Google. That's when it became clear that the two were high-profile escorts. Still curious, he dug and got around to even figuring out their rates and some quick math on the 2 nights they had stayed.
What the fuck is a pop-up brothel? I know what an escort is. Ain't that somebody you pay to, like, either show you around or you pay them to fuck after they show you around or some shit like that?
He figured it added to at least £2,600 each, £5,200 in total. He couldn't wait anymore, so he just went to the house. What he found was a little strange to say the least. The apartment smelled like wine and perfume. There were at least 7 or 8 wine bottles, which for 2 nights was quite heavy drinking. He also found used condom wrappers under the bed and said that the bin was literally overflowing with tissues and used condoms. Greg was concerned that his house had been used as a pop-up brothel, meaning that he had indirectly broken the law I just talked about. So he contacted the police. Surprisingly, although they took down all the information he offered, nothing much was done about it. He even tried following up, but nothing much came of it. According to him, he felt a bit let down by the police, and even worried for other people who might end up in his shoes. Now, as Greg's story made its rounds online and drew attention, a sex worker by the name of Charlotte shared her own side of the story when it came to preferring temporary housing like Airbnb. Like many other sex workers, she would be forced to move houses whenever neighbors learned of her profession, and the horrible experience of that added to the expensive nature of constantly moving. This is why it seemed preferable to stay in Airbnbs. She'd do so together with a friend or two in order to share the expenses. Charlotte also said there was a safety in numbers because some clients could sometimes be dangerous, and it always helped knowing that there was someone around in such an unfortunate situation. Interestingly, she fully acknowledged that she was breaking the law, with the logic behind it being that she'd rather risk being accused of running a pop-up brothel than risk her own life. Anyway, Greg's story also caught Airbnb's attention, and it didn't take long for them to respond, saying that they had zero tolerance for such behavior. Since then, campaign groups have come out to advocate for legal establishments where sex workers can receive regular clients, which would also promote their safety through security measures like installing CCTVs. Host attacked a guest couple as they slept. This one, like the first case, involves a superhost. It happened back in 2018 when a Boston couple who had traveled.
What makes you be like, I'm gonna let you sleep here, but when y'all go to sleep, I'm gonna whoop y'all ass, fuck. Like, what makes you think in your head, like, you know what? These people are living in my house. I should just beat their ass. Like, why did that thought even go through your mind,
down to Los Angeles to get away from their busy lives, ended up in a nightmare that they never anticipated. The couple, medical residents Jaleesa Jackson and Chidozie Uwandu, described their experience at this particular Airbnb as the scare of their lives. So here's what went down. When they checked into the guest house, everything seemed okay. Their host, a man named JJ, had even left them a kind note and a cold bottle of wine to welcome them. They spent that night happy, and it wasn't until 5:30 in the morning the next day that all the drama started. According to them, they got rudely woken up by loud
He said 5:30. Yeah, this shit would have pissed me off. I already can't sleep, and then 5:30 hit. I'm in like the first stages of going to sleep. You know, like I'm on the brink of sleep, like I'm still awake, and wham, you get knocked across the head with a damn a bat or something, and they hit you like fuck. You wake up, I'll be pissed, boy. I was just on the brink of going to sleep, and you want to wake me up with a bat because you got mental problems, like bro.
Banging and yelling at the front door. Out of fear, Jaleesa called their host JJ. Strangely, they heard the phone ringing outside the door. That's how they found out it was actually JJ banging on the door. He picked up the call, admitted it was him, and apologized for the quote confusion, though adding that life was too short to give them an explanation. I don't know either. Ironically, he wished them a nice time in LA. For whatever reason, the couple stayed and even enjoyed their first day at
What the fuck? What?
on the door. The phone ringing outside the door. That's how they found out it was actually JJ banging on the door. He picked up the call, admitted it was him, and apologized for the quote confusion, though adding that life was too short to give them an explanation.
Nigga, no, bring your ass back. What do you mean life too short to what? Maybe you'll tell me a fucking explanation on why you banging on your door at the while I'm here, like nigga. Fucking banging on the door for boy.
I don't know either. Ironically, he wished them a nice time in LA. For whatever reason, the couple stayed and even enjoyed their first day at the beach. On their second night though, at around 2 in the morning, something even crazier happened. A man came crashing in through their bedroom window, throwing broken glass all over the place. Uwandu's instinct was that they were under attack and he sprang into action, even managing to pin the man down. The man unfortunately managed to escape Uwandu's hold, but luckily, they were able to identify him as JJ. They couldn't let that slide, and so they immediately contacted the authorities. The police were initially skeptical that the Airbnb host would try and attack their guests, but they eventually came around and swung into action. They even sent in police helicopters and luckily captured JJ, whose excuse was that he had been trying to evict the couple for cleaning charges. It was later discovered that JJ wasn't even allowed to rent out the place in the first place. That's according to an elderly lady who was his landlord at the time. Now, the couple was in no way spending another night at the house, so they just checked into a nearby Hilton. Sadly, on top of what they had already spent on Airbnb, they ended up paying another $2,300 for their hotel room, parking, and other expenses. Because of this, they contacted Airbnb for compensation, and it took months for them to be reimbursed the full amount of their fees. Beyond that, Jaleesa and Uwandu also asked for $5,000 from the company, but only got half plus free therapy sessions to overcome the trauma. That solution ended up not being so well received, as even celebrities chimed in with disappointment. Actress Gabrielle Union, for example, tweeted saying that whatever happened could have ended way worse than it did, and that Airbnb needs to protect their guests better. Airbnb remained adamant though, and only responded by removing JJ from the platform. They said there have been millions of stays on Airbnb overall, and negative experiences are extremely rare occurrences.
You think so, Airbnb? Do you really believe that? Because anybody can just flash out at any moment. Like, every time you go on Airbnb, every single person on your app can just flash out at once. You know? On the niggas that's the internet shit. And you say it's a rare occurrence. Get the fuck out of here.
New Year's banger with over 250 guests.
What? New Year's banger well.
As crazy as it sounds, this next one was a party that took police officers from 5 area departments to shut it down. It happened on the last Saturday of December of 2017 when officers were called to a home in Shelley Drive, Ohio at around 11 p.m. Why? Well, noise complaints. Also, adding on to that, at the time, there was a snow ban and neighbors had complained that there were many cars parked on the streets blocking their driveways. When the police first got there, what they found was somewhat bizarre. There was this guy, let's call him Guy A, who was responsible for throwing the party. Guy A had rented just one room in the house for $40 a night through Airbnb. The owner of the house, a 28-year-old man who we'll just call Guy B, was actually home with the guests when all this was going down, which then makes it weird when you learn that, like any other host on the platform, he had specific rules for his guests, one of them being that no parties were allowed during their stay in the house.
Okay. So you let a nigga rent a room out in your house, right? Did you not know he was gonna throw a party while you was the? Oh, that bit the hell on my tongue. You didn't know he was gonna rent. I mean, damn. He wasn't going to throw a party in your crib. It's just weird to me. It's your house. How you don't know a party is on the horizon? Oh, it's finna come. Like, how you don't know that?
The host also had barriers in place to prevent access to some of the other rooms. This house guest, unfortunately, cared less about what his host had to say because, like I pointed out, he hosted a huge party with a turnout of almost 250 people. And still getting crazier, he had apparently advertised this party on Twitter, inviting practically everyone to what he called the quote, New Year's banger. Why? Not really too sure, but maybe for the $5 that he was charging people at the entrance. But where was the owner all along? I mean, we know he was home, but where? Well, trying unsuccessfully to get things under control. He is said to have tried to intervene, but it got out of control as he even was threatened by 5 men at the party. For his safety, he retreated and locked himself in his room, where he then decided to call the police. The Seven Hills police responded, and initially, they had—
Nigga, you let 5 niggas come and run your house? Run in your house and run your shit? You know how fast I would have went to go find that thing and almost use it on them people? Couldn't be me. I mean, yeah, it couldn't be me because I'm not renting out my room. Renting out a room in my house. I'm sorry. Couldn't.
They had a hard time accessing the house because of snow. Then when they finally managed to, they said they could hear the music from 100 yards away and saw a lot of people going in and out of the house. They described the house as being so tightly packed in each room that there was no space for someone to even extend their arm. They began trying to usher people out, asking the partygoers to leave, but that only started anti-police comments and shouts. The officers from Seven Hills PD were clearly outnumbered and luckily had called in reinforcements. Almost comically though, even as other officers arrived, there were still more people coming to the party and reportedly turned away at least 50 other vehicles. To effectively break up the party, they had to strategically gain entrance from different parts of the house, with some reports saying that they were met by smells of weed and alcohol, and sights of people throwing up literally where they stood, and also visible heavy damage to the house. And even with all that effort, it took about an hour for them to completely clear out the place. Also out of panic, some people had broken windows or broken doors trying to escape, only causing more damage. I mean, things were so bad that a neighbor whose house was also sadly destroyed that night said that she was fearful for the officers' safety, describing the partygoers as a mob. The man behind the party, Guy A, though remaining unidentified, is said to have faced several serious charges. These include disorderly conduct for unreasonable noise, and hindering movement on public streets, furnishing alcohol to minors, alcohol activities without a permit, and criminal damage. As for the aftermath, the homeowner said everything had been ruined. It's still unclear whether or not he got assistance from Airbnb, having already filed a complaint. They did, however, say the same exact statement I've said before, that there are millions of Airbnb experiences, and this is just a really rare one. They put that out along with a list of tips for hosts to prevent similar occurrences. Host essayed guests after holding them hostage. This one is quite a bit more sad than the others because it involves a case of SA. What was meant to be a fun-filled trip to Madrid turned into a horror story for 19-year-old Jacob Lopez after his Airbnb host held him hostage and took advantage of him. It was reported that early in the evening of the 4th of July of 2015, Jacob's mother, Michaela Giles, received very concerning texts from her son begging for help. Jacob had been staying at an apartment he had booked through Airbnb while in Madrid, and through his numerous texts, his mom found out that his host had been harassing her son. According to Jacob, since they arrived at her apartment from the subway, the host had been pressuring him into submitting to sexual acts. She allegedly kept on kissing him and even took off his pants at one point, but Jacob denied all of her advances. All that pretty frightening and made worse by the fact that the host had locked him up and was rattling knives in the kitchen to threaten him. His mom said she felt completely helpless, having been so far away from her son back home in Massachusetts. She had one recourse though, contacting Airbnb and asking them to contain the situation. Surprisingly, they weren't very cooperative and only took her around in circles. According to her, the Airbnb representatives completely refused to give her her son's address and also refused to call the police. Instead, they provided her with the Madrid police's number and insisted they could only take action if the police themselves contacted them. When she called the provided number, Michaela said that it took her to a Spanish recording that kept disconnecting her. Frustrated and understandably so, she blew up the Airbnb contacts until all her calls were being directed to voicemail. Now, as his mom was desperately doing all she could on his end, Jacob was frantically trying to find anything that he could use to protect himself. He said at this point he was so scared for his life that he thought the night would either end with his host killing him or him killing her. He couldn't, however, stomach the thought of being a killer and couldn't have lived with someone's blood on his hands. Sadly, alone and defenseless, Jacob was reported to have been continuously SA'd that entire night. Eventually, he managed to convince his host to let him out by lying to her that he had plans to meet up with his friends who knew where he was staying. Once he was out of the apartment, he immediately left Madrid and headed back home.
Nah, he better than me, boy. I would have, as soon as, if he would have gave me the slither of a boy, my hands was free for just one, 1 second, boy. Her head would have been looking like, her head would have been looking like Rey Mysterio when Great Khali was squishing his shit. I ain't gonna lie. I would, boy, you just don't know.
Come to Massachusetts. Now, regarding the host, what we do know for sure is that she was a transgender woman. She did, however, deny all allegations against her and claimed that the sex was consensual. She even accused Jacob of making up the story because he was allegedly transphobic. Regardless, the host later shared that the Madrid police had already visited her apartment and that she expected to be exonerated. Jacob, on the other hand, was left traumatized and wished that he had trusted his instincts from the very beginning when he noticed a few things about the host didn't add up. That's despite the good Airbnb reviews. His mom, Michaela, was equally traumatized, but she was really proud of her son for coming out and sharing his experience. The host profile has since been removed from the app's listing, and Airbnb responded by saying that they had learned a lot from Jacob's incident and were working on improving their guest safety measures. Homeowner fined $500,000 after renter's illegal Airbnb. What happens when someone illegally lists your property as an Airbnb without your knowledge? Well, Drew Gurl is a perfect answer to that question. This Miami Beach house owner was facing a fine worth almost $500,000 because his beach house had been listed on the platform. According to Drew, he had used Airbnb in the past, and to his knowledge, it had been years since he was last on the platform. It was thus surprising when he got the first notice from the city of Miami Beach on the 19th of January 2017 for listing a property against the city's zip code guidelines. All he knew was that his property had two long-term tenants, Isabel Burney and Temitope Oladapo, and they weren't from Airbnb. Just normal people renting out the place for their own use. And at the time, he was living in Silicon Valley, far enough that he wasn't aware of the day-to-day activities on the property. It soon became clear though that these tenants were subletting the place. Despite a clause in their lease that forbade them from using the property for transient occupancy, an agent that Drew sent in to investigate confirmed that the tenants were doing exactly that. They also weren't taking care of the place as they should have been. The agent said that when they visited the house, they found that the yard had been trashed, the patio furniture looked shredded, and somebody had installed electronic locks, probably to enable guests to check in and out. Anyway, livid at what had gone down, Drew embarked on a rather painful journey of clearing his name. First, there was the option to deal with the city, something he figured would take some time. So instead, he was focused on taking down the property from Airbnb's listing. Seems easy, but then it apparently took him quite some time to find his house among the endless listings. He eventually found it on the 17th of March that same year, a little over a month later. And to his surprise, the listing promised guests a tropical and electric home that could sleep 12. Now armed with the property's link, he emailed Airbnb's customer service explaining the situation. And again, you'd think this would be as easy as showing proof you own the property and getting it taken off the website, right? Well, unfortunately, it turns out Airbnb wasn't too eager to help. They only responded saying that they didn't offer—
Bro, what's up with Airbnb and not helping? Hey, bro. That's just so weird. You have 16 people?
For any legal advice to their users. It wasn't actually until Drew reached out to a friend that had connections with an Airbnb that he received a somewhat useful response. On the 28th of March, a whole 11 days later, Airbnb finally wrote back to him. this time promising to handle the situation. And to Drew's relief, the company kept their word, and on the 4th of April, the listing was taken down. With that out of the way, he was then ready to deal with the city's $500,000 fine. But then things weren't over just yet. He had barely evicted his tenants when new travelers showed up at the house, 4 days after booking their vacation stay. Drew would then find out that Bernie and Aladopa, his previous tenants, had started their own booking website called Vacayo and quite bizarrely, listed Drew's house on it even after they knew it was taken down from Airbnb.
The niggas use your shit as a house for their house. Nigga, what? Bro, this is insane work. You thinking you kicked them out? Like, okay, I'm finna fix. Yeah, I'm finna do this and this and that. And then some more niggas pull up. Nigga, wow.
So this meant that the two were still in business. Anyway, it's unclear how he went about getting them to take down the listing from their site, if at all they did, and the two also denied all allegations made against them. Among the concerning bits of this case is that it seems that this kind of thing isn't unheard of. Many other homeowners actually came forward and shared being in similar horrific experiences as Drew. Guests find corpse in garden. About 10 miles from Paris, there's a little known but well-off town called Polyzoo, which in February of 2016 made its way to global media headlines after a rather unsettling Airbnb fiasco that happened there. Guests discovered a body in the garden in the house that they were staying at. The renters, described as a group of young people mostly in their 20s, had intended to stay at the property for the weekend, but their stay got cut short when they bumped into a body on Saturday afternoon. Now, to give you perspective on the house, it was located in suburban Paris and was described as a charming 7-bedroom house with a swimming pool and overlooking a forest area. The host had it listed for £435 a night. Reports also pointed out that the far end of the property was unfenced and simply slopped into the forest. Like, the garden just extended into the forest. It was near this end that the group discovered the body of the woman, who police estimated to have been in her early 40s. The body was found laying down, face on the dirt, covered in branches and surrounded with wooden stumps. The woman was dressed, but with no shoes and had a ring with a large stone. Interestingly, the police believed the body had been left out there to be found, and so they questioned the renters as well as the family that owned the property. It actually turned out that the family of 7 that had lived there had gone on a short vacation to a different region in France and had intended to return on the following week on Wednesday. Learning of the news, the homeowner was reported to have been pretty shaken by the idea that it could have been his young children that made this gruesome discovery. Anyway, the identity of the woman couldn't be immediately established as her body was too decomposed for autopsy. It was, however, estimated that she had died about a month or more prior. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. If I earned your subscription, make sure to subscribe. I also quickly want to say again a big thanks to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. You can support the channel by using code TUV or scanning this QR code to get 55% off your first month. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, make sure to go follow me on Instagram. I'm a good looking dude, I think. Go check me out on Instagram. By the way, gym progress, because in video in like March I told you guys please hold me responsible, so here's a little bit of process. There we go.
I want to see that.
Guys, next time I upload.
Yeah, that's the end of the video. Shout out Tuv for sure. Shout out Tuv because he's tough. No, sorry. W video though. This made me more skeptical of Airbnbs now. I don't want to get beat on while I'm sleeping. I don't want to get taken hostage and done other things done to me. I don't want to mess with Airbnbs anymore, to be honest. With that being said, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that. And I'll see y'all boys in that video. Peace.
I got a bubble coat to match the kicks. I gave my partners choppers tryna blitz. I got a bougie hoe that got a bitch. I got Call of Duty guns that got a switch. I sip a lot of syrup, I got a pistol. Bro strapped with a rod but don't know how to fish. I'm shining a lot of diamonds on my fist. I just spent a lot of dollars on my fit. Yeah, go get the check for my son and daughter. So every day I'm trying to get paid. We hit the streets and we flood. We just like Baby and Doug, how them young niggas get paid.